there, but he saw it on Wheel of Fortune last night.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Probably Guilford, probably lived in Guilford.
Probably Guilford, right?
Well, the video was terrific. I thought that short clip they showed was really kind of neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Dave, Joel is not going to make it tonight.
Okay,
Joel,
thanks.
not. Thanks, Joe. Waiting for a couple more. I see Tom Berland isn't with us yet, is he?
No, I don't believe so.
And Carol. Give it a couple minutes.
We need to dim the lights just a little.
Carol?
Carol? And give 30 seconds for Tom Berland to check in, and if not, we'll start, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, well, why don't we begin? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 15th meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. We have 3 public hearing items tonight on our agenda. However, there's been a couple changes. Our first was application 20-16 plus coastal site plan in Longshore Lane. That application was withdrawn. Dave, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I actually just spoke to the engineer, and the engineer had gotten communication from the applicant to withdraw it, so I actually do not have any additional information.
Okay, so that is off the agenda and off our books. So moving along to item agenda 2, that's application 21-03 plus coastal site plan at 856 Boston Post Road, the Ledges. And that's going to be continued until May 20th. Dave, any comments on that?
No, that's correct. Chris McKeon is here. If anybody has any questions, I know Chris has been working hard with their application team to put together some additional documentation to provide to us. And he wants to get that to us and to the public and the intervener in advance of the May meeting. And so we figured it would be better just to continue from this evening so everybody has the documents in hand to look at in advance.
Okay.
So Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, you said it perfectly, Dave. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll be back with that application on our zoning meeting in May, which is on May 20th. So that will move to that date. Next hearing item is number 3, 21-05, 110 and 114 Bradley Road, map 38, lot 74 and 75. The owner is Ironworks LLC. The applicant is Davis Realty. And it's a special permit application for the construction of a 48-bedroom apartment building and associated appurtenances in the downtown village district. And before I go any further, a couple things. Number one, I think, again, we'll be seeing some faces all over the screen tonight. So I'd like to point out or introduce the members of the commission. Giselle McDowell, our co-chair, Jim Madison, Elliot Hitchcock, Joe Banofsky, Dr. Shona Hay, John Mathers. And for this application, we are down 2 members, I believe, Tom Berland and Joel. I will seat Ron Bodenson for Joel and Carol Snow for Tom. And then, of course, we have Dave Anderson, our town planner, and Marlene Kennedy, who's we see most of the time her head as she takes the minutes of the meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here tonight on behalf of my client, the applicant, Davis Realty, for their project entitled The Bradley, which is located at 110 and 114 Bradley Road in your town of Madison, Connecticut. Just to familiarize ourselves with the site so we all know what we're talking about, this is the site that's next to the hearth. It had the old laundromat. Artistic sign used to be in there, and there's a couple little residential structures on there as well. Before I get into my presentation, you're going to see a lot of supporting cast tonight. But the most prominent one I want to just turn the floor over to is the developer himself, Mr. Jerry Davis. He wants to say a few things, and then we'll begin our presentation from the professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Jerry, before you start, I'd like to say personally on behalf of the commission, our deepest condolences over your father's passing. We're all saddened by that, and the town of Madison is poorer because of it. He was a great guy.
Thanks very much, Ron. I appreciate that. I'm pretty sure most of my family is watching tonight, and they appreciate it too. And I have a feeling my dad's watching because I think they have Zoom wherever he is as well. So. Anyway, it has been a tough week, but I'm very, very happy to be here. It's been a while that we've been working on this project, and you know, it has not been easy to figure out what the highest and best use is for this site. You know, it started out as a blacksmith shop 100 years ago. And as Mike said, it was a laundromat, and it's certainly not the prettiest spot in town. You know, we've looked at, you know, what does the POCD say? We've, you know, searched ourselves and what are our family values and what's important to us. And I would describe those as something that is, you know, high quality, first class, and good for the town of Madison. And with those things in mind, we've tried over the years a lot of different scenarios. We've looked at office and medical and all kinds of things. And, you know, we've run up against obstacles with mostly with septic, honestly, you know, in the downtown area, septic limits, and have prevented a lot of these things from working. You know, the change that unlocked the possibilities was when the legislation allowed for a higher septic limit per site, and that's brought us to today, when we're presenting a rental building, and that's something that, you know, we know a lot about because we have a lot of apartments downtown. This is going to be called the Bradley, and it's going to be more upscale apartments in an elevator service building, and it provides an option that just doesn't exist in Madison right now. There's really very little inventory of particularly 2 bedrooms in a nicer building. We believe it's going to allow a lot of people to stay in town, whereas they might not otherwise be able to do that. And obviously it's going to take an unattractive site and make it a showplace, and it'll bring a lot of people into the downtown area and activate it, and, you know, those people will shop and eat there. The design, for the design, we brought in the firm of Bardman, Hendry, and Archetype. They're based in Boston, and their wheelhouse is multifamily. They do that day and night. Dan Chen is here from Bardman. He's going to be presenting the design piece. It's not Bardman's first time in Madison. They actually designed the rebuild of the West Pavilion at Hammonasset when it was destroyed in Hurricane Irene. So they know the town a little bit, and they've created a sophisticated design that is, I think, in the perfect spot. Before I turn it over to the professionals, I just want to say, you know, on a personal note, my brother Stephen and I, both, you know, we grew up here, but we also moved back here with our families and our businesses here. And we're not going anywhere, and it's, you know, important for us that we stand behind anything we bring forward. We want it to be good for the town. It's kind of our ethic. It's why we're fighting right now to keep the movie theater open against very tall odds, but we hope it'll be able to reopen on June 1st. And we think this building is the right project for the town. So I think the best thing for me is to get out of the way of Mike and everybody else and let them show you what we've got in mind. And I'm happy to answer any questions for the committee.
Thank you very much.
All right, I guess let's start jumping into it. Dave, am I all set to share screen?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Let me start finding it here. Got that up on the screen, Dave?
No, we can't see it right now.
Give it a second, it'll probably pop up. Anything yet?
No, fortunately not. I'll get ready just in case, and I can pull it up. So give me a second.
Just pop it up, Dave, and we'll go through it that way.
That sounds good.
So while Dave's popping that up, I'll get started on it. So we're here tonight again for the project. It's called the Bradley. It's located at 110 and 114 Bradley Road in Madison, Connecticut. The owner's Ironworks LLC, and the applicant is Davis Realty. And as you know, we have Mr. Jerry Davis on with us tonight. The civil engineering firm of record is Harkin Engineering LLC, my firm, and the surveyor of record is Gessex and Associates PC out of Clinton, Connecticut. There is a little bit of inland wetlands on the site, and the soil scientist of record is Mr. Richard Snarsky. Again, the project site is located where the old laundromat used to be, next to the hearth, next to the dry cleaners, across from Hammond Asset Fitness in that warehouse building. So if we go to the next screen, Dave, we have the site survey. That site survey, again, was by Gesseck and Associates. It shows the two parcels, 110 Bradley Road, which is directly adjacent to the hearth. You can see the outline of the hearth building on the left side there. And then you could see all the rest of the buildings throughout the project site. I think there's a total of 4 buildings on the site right now. They will all be demolished. The utilities and the septic systems will be filled in. Because septic is the highest concern on the site, the leaching galleys will be completely removed, and the entire areas will be filled with the septic sand to be able to put in the septic systems that we need to support this building. So if we go down to the next screen, you can start to see our site plan. Our site, when we combine both 110 and 114 together as one parcel, equates to 1.43 acres, almost an acre and a half, which is quite a big lot, especially in the downtown area. Again, it's located in the D zone, the downtown district. And for this project, I just want to reiterate that we're here for a special exception. So the building you see in front of you, since I know Mr. Chairman had read the legal notice, it was at 48 bedrooms. We've been going back and forth with the health department. We're actually at 49 bedrooms now, and that's based on the health department review. So as you can see, the building is almost centrally located on the site. The pad itself, first floor, is around 13,500 square feet. When you enter the site, you're entering on the left-hand side of the screen. It's two-way traffic, 24 feet wide in as we come off of Bradley Road. And then you'll notice that as we come by, we have a small parking area with a loading space. That's for loading spaces for like UPS or Amazon in that area. And then you come around back, and that's where we've basically situated 90% of our parking. We don't have our parking up front. We want the building to, the artistic nature of the building to stand out. We have a lot of green space. And we didn't want to interrupt that nice vibe with all the parking. So we put all the parking in the rear of the parcel. That's also where you'll see the trash receptacle, as well as some of the appurtenances that we have on the outside is we have electric charging stations for cars and things of that. And again, that is in the rear parking lot.
Awesome.
As we go through, you'll see there's a sidewalk network that leads people from Bradley Road if they want to say walk to the train station or, just to go out and about, walk downtown. We have that interlocking sidewalk system. And then it's important to note that the building itself and the site plan that you see here meets all the planning and zoning regulations, the bulk standards as far as lot coverage, building setbacks, and things of that nature. Now, if we go to the next screen, this is our site development plan. And this is where you see all of our utilities. Now, Jerry had mentioned about the hardest part of any project downtown or anywhere on the shoreline is septic. You can see here, we're supporting the building with 4 separate septic systems. Those septic systems have been reviewed by the Madison Health Department. Amanda has looked them over. She's asked us to make some changes, which we have. And then we've addressed all Amanda's concerns, but because of the size of the septic system, it does have to go to the state for comment, which it was sent up there. We don't anticipate any negative feedback coming back from them. But as far as a cursory review, when you heard a certain threshold, the state does have a shot to look at it. So that's where it currently resides. If you go over to the right side of the screen, you can see where we're bringing in the gas and the water lines, the utilities. Come right down and head to the back of the building. And then on the left side of the screen, we hug the building with the electrical and telephone. So underneath the ground, it looks pretty tight, but we meet all the setbacks for utilities. The site has a series of catch basins to collect the stormwater runoff. And then it discharges into a detention pond that we have kind of in the dog leg section over there. So we handle the treatment of the water quality volume through that, and then we discharge into the small stream that's directly adjacent to the site. Now, it's important to note that we've already gone to wetlands. We do have the Wetlands Commission's approval for this project. They didn't ask us to make really any modifications to the site plan itself. Now, because of the grading on the site towards the south boundary of the property, the rear property line, we do have to put a small retaining wall in. Max height is 4 feet. And because that it's going to have a surcharge from vehicles, that wall will need to be engineered. So that will be an engineered wall by the time it gets to the building permit stage. And again, towards the rear of the property, we do have some guide rail to protect any cars from going off that area. If we go to the next sheet, Dave, would be our septic design. It's a pretty thorough design just based on the size of the building, each septic system's call out, and physical septic type is on this sheet. This is the sheet that Amanda and the Madison Health Department had looked at and had us do a couple of small tweaks to it. The next sheet of our project plan set is going to be the erosion control sheet. Really, that's one of the most important sheets in this project set. Usually it's kind of like the parsley of the plan set. There's a lot going on here. Because it's in a high travel area, we do have construction fence to be put up, erected in the front and the sides of the building to keep pedestrians from wandering onto the construction site. We have silt fence, hay bales located throughout. All the storm drainage systems will be lines with hay bales to keep any debris or any silt from getting into the wetlands or the detention pond. We have areas where we have stockpiles to be placed, and then we do have a construction entrance that leads out into Bradley Road, so we're not tracking any dirt or anything like that onto the site. And then our last sheet in the project plan set is basically our detail sheet. Shows such things as the pavement requirements, the handicap parking spaces, storm drainage, guide rail details, and things of that nature. Dave, if you can just go up to the site plan, which I believe is the 3rd page of our plan set. Okay. As you can see on our plan set, again, the driveway is tucked off to the westerly side of the project parcel. We've and you'll hear from a bunch of people as we go through. I just wanted you to keep in mind on that, we do have our traffic engineer here to discuss the location of that. We did go through a bunch of different scenarios on where to place that driveway, and this was by far the most feasible and prudent place for it. And again, it gave a good traffic flow through the site. With that being said, I think the next thing to do would be to turn it over to our architect, Dan Chen. Before we do that, though, I just want to let you know that this project has been in front of ACA. It's been in front of ACA 3 separate times. We do have ACA approval on this building. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, they do get to look at this again one more time? Or are we all set?
No, they approved it as shown at the last meeting. So they
yeah. Yep. So at the last meeting, they physically approved the plan set that Dan had put together. So without further ado, I'd like to put it over to our architect, Mr. Dan Chen.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Chen. I'm the architect principal with Barkman, Hendry and Archetype. Unfortunately, Joe Barkman couldn't be here, and I was intimately involved with the project, and so I'm happy to be here. I can start sharing my screen. Can you see?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So as Mike has, oops, sorry, apologize. Okay, this gives you a sort of a general overview. Mike obviously went through a very, very accurate description, but I wanted to sort of show you where the site is relative to the surrounding context. Bradley Road is right here. The train station is about 1,000 feet away. This is the train track. We're due north, so the site is north, south, east, and west. The Hearth is right, senior living community is right here to the west of the site, and this is the current 2-story retail laundromat. The downtown Madison is to the south of the site, and this, I believe, is the text pond. This gives you a sense of the site. Look, we're on Bradley Road, looking south. To the left is the current 2-story retail, I believe, is a commercial cleaner. To the right is the Hearth, 3-story senior living community. It's a relatively open site, as you can see. The site plan here, again, to orient you, Bradley Road is to the north. The Hearth is to the left, and the building massing is designed as a single plate, about 13,500 square feet, but it's in a U configuration, and this is such that we can create a central courtyard that is sort of facing to the Bradley Road. The purpose for this is that the building one could be set back approximately around 33 feet from the property line, so that reduces the massing of this building. The center courtyard is such that again, it breaks this massing of the building further, so that it creates this sort of nice community. As you saw, the entrance to the main site is from the western side. As you come through, the majority of the surface parking is located in the back. This is the where all the utilities, turnaround space, main drop off. The lobby into the building is from the southern side from the parking. The building is approximately 75 feet from the nearest to the Hearth. It's about 36 feet on the eastern edge, from the edge of the building to the existing 2-story retail space. We're set back about 75 feet from the edge of the property, from Bradley Road to the main face of the central courtyard. The landscaping, and as our landscape Bill Brown's here, will go into a little more detail. The landscaping is intentionally kept simple, sort of to be in line with the look of the neighborhood. This is a straight-on elevation from Bradley Road, and the reason for this is to give you a sense of the height of this proposed building relative to the surrounding context. To the right is the Hearth, 3-story building with a pitched roof, the proposed building here with the 2 wings and and this is the main facade of the building setback about 75 feet from the property line. This is the 2-story commercial laundry adjacent. And I think this is another it's a commercial property here. This gives you the sort of proximate dimensions. We're 75 feet from on the western edge to the hearth, and about 37 feet to the 2-story laundry here. The building width is 38 feet for the 2 wings, and the total width of the building is approximately 140 feet wide. And some of the key characteristics that we noted in terms of designing or approach to design this building is that there's not really a definite style in this area, and that the eclectic sort of the eclectic style was somewhat, there's a rich diverse richness to this area, and so we felt that the building was this design sort of somewhat fits into that design. The 2 wings breaks up the massing of the building facing Bradley Road, so that helps to reduce the building further, the massing further. The building is set back some fairly far from Bradley Road. I'll quickly go over the floor plan. I won't go into too much detail unless there's any questions. We have 11 1-bedrooms on the property in the proposed building. There's 19 2-bedrooms proposed. To orient you again, to the north is Bradley Road. This is the center courtyard. Parking is to the rear of the building. The entry lobby is to the south as you come in. Immediately there is a community amenity here, fitness, and that also allows you access out to the center courtyard. The units themselves, the apartments, are surrounding in a double-loaded corridor. The 2 bedrooms are typically located on the corners of the building on the first floor, and then to the left here are the utility mechanical spaces. The main elevators is right here, as well as the 2 stairs that takes you up to the upper floors. So as you come into the building, taking the elevator, going up to then the 2nd floor, again, the 2 bedrooms are along the corners, where the inside units are, these are 2 stories, and then this is a 1-story, two bedrooms, and this is the 1-bedroom apartment. As you come out of the elevator, there's a double height lobby area that you can look back down to. Many of the 2-bedroom apartments facing the center courtyard has outdoor balconies that overlooks the center courtyard. As you come up further to the 3rd floor, the 10 apartments of buildings on the corners in this case are pulled back, and you will see that a little later in the 3-dimensional renderings. And so that creates a large patio deck for these apartments here. And the center 2 bedrooms have these outdoor balconies similar to the ones below. And there are 10 units on this floor, on each floor, for a total of 30 units and 49 bedrooms. As you come up, continuing up, the elevator comes up, there's a communal deck of 735 square feet proposed, and 1 stair for the egress capacity is coming up to this level as well. And this area is designated on the roof for the mechanical equipment to service this building. These are pulled back from the edge of the building such that it further reduces the height and the visual impact to the surrounding neighborhood. This is a rendering that we produced. We're at the northwest corner of Bradley Road. This is looking at the proposed building. To your right is the hearth. This is the western side of the main entrance into the building, to the parking beyond. And so as you can see, the third floor is further pushed back, massing, reducing further the impact to Bradley Road. The center courtyard over here, and the material here that we're looking at is trying to use a blend of different textures, materials, and articulation and massing, interlocking volumes to reduce the mass of the building, and that is really the purpose of this design. The larger windows sort of harkens back to the black the blacksmith that was on the site before, and since the intended crowd is sort of young professional, we want to keep this light and airy. The outdoor balconies, the patios have a cable railing system that again is in keeping, trying to keep this as transparent or open as we can. The building hosts these corners so that it participates in the urban context, but not overwhelming the street. This is a rendering standing on the northeast corner of Bradley Road, looking west for orientation. The hearth is in the back. Again, similar treatment, setting the building corners back, having the two-story wing sort of at the articulation at the front of the building, the front of Bradley Road, if you will, there, where the building meets the ground, there is a stone band or a ground block stone band that sort of meets and wraps all around the building. Again, through using different colors, textures, we're trying to further sort of articulate, but also break down the mass of this building. The elevation looking straight from north elevation, the two massing on the right and the center portion of the building, and this is the center courtyard. This is the south side where this is the parking, looking from the parking area. The main lobby, two-story, is here in the center, and with the apartments surrounding that. There's a small canopy allowing for the entrance in this area. What you see up here is the elevator overrun on top, the deck, and the one stair coming up to the roof. Again, the colored materials and texture is intended to break down a fairly large facade. This is looking from the east side, and this is adjacent to the laundry. As you come in, the same strategy, articulation, the massing, the roof deck. And so it's, again, trying to use these techniques of massing and colors and textures to further reduce this large side of the building. Same strategy on this west side. As you come in, this is the main road as you come through the lobby area here and the parking beyond. Just to briefly touch on the materials, and again, trying to make this sort of light and modern and airy. The cable railing systems on the decks, a fiber cement system. This is similar to a common product as Hardy. We're using Allura here, but it's juxtaposing using a panel and a lap siding fiber cement panels, and as well as using different colors. And then where the building meets the ground, a ground block stone band that sort of articulates the material of the building. This is really just to show a cross section of the building so that you can see the intended thermal insulations. We intend to fully provide this, or for this building to be as energy efficient as we can. Cavities with insulation, continuous insulation, high thermal windows, and so on. So here, I will give this handover to our landscape architects, but I know I've gone through this pretty quickly, so I hope that maybe when there's questions, we can come back to these and answer. So with that,
Thanks,
Bill?
Dan.
let me introduce
Mr. Chen.
Bill. Okay,
Thank you. My name is Bill Brown. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm working with the team on the project. I wanted to go through the landscape plan.
oh, sorry, did you need me to share the screen, Bill?
Yes,
Sorry, okay. My apologies. Go ahead.
that's okay. Okay. As Mike said, we've gone through a number of meetings with the ACCO, and they do have a landscape architect that's on the committee, and this has been reviewed with them. Generally, when you're looking at this plan, the lighter green are grass areas, the darker greens are shrub areas, and you can see the trees that are evident throughout the site because they're a different color and they're round. At the base of the building, we do have a stone band along the base of the building, and we have done that so that there is ease of maintenance along the base of the building in areas where, especially where lawn is going up against the edge of the building, it'll be easy to maintain. On the street on Bradley Road, we have 4 street trees. Those are elms, which will get quite large. They'll hold the street. They're very beautiful trees, and they'll provide some screening for the building as well. As we go down to the left side of the plan, we are using trees along that edge, which are maple trees. In the back of the building, in the parking lot area, we're primarily using linden trees. And so the flowering trees are shown in sort of the pinkish color that's shown here. The one change to this plan that is not evident on your plans because of comments from the ACCO is that we did add a tree at the bottom left in the parking lot. We were able to add a tree there because we had some leftover space for parking. And then along the parking area, between the parking area and the building, we added a hedge in order to block lights from the parking lot into the building. As Dan mentioned, we have a nice courtyard as part of the project, and there is a door that comes out from the fitness room where there's a walkway that takes you to a space where there's 2 benches. It's actually large enough for 2 people to do yoga out there. You can also use the lawn areas to exercise and do yoga. I know that, with the pandemic that people are doing things outside, especially in apartments, much more than they did before, and we have provided that. There is a hedge along the Bradley Road side, so that we do to give some protection there. The shrub materials are really quite simple, and we really had to pay attention to the types of species of plants that we're using, especially in the north side because of lack of sun exposure. And the plant list has been reviewed by the ACCO's landscape architect, and he only had one suggestion that we change out one plant species, which we did. Now, Dan also mentioned that we do have patios, and the patios are shown in sort of a beige color. What we've done with the patios, instead of putting fencing around them in order to get rid of sort of that vertical element, is that we're using taller evergreen shrubs around the patio areas in order to screen them from the neighbors. Now, the next plan is the planting plan that was submitted. It has a detailed plant list. I could go through the plants if you'd like, maybe later on if there's any questions. But the planting plan is fairly simple. When we do planting, we don't do 1s and 2s of different shrubs. You can see that, they're fairly well organized, and, the shrubs and plants are planted where there's masses of, 8 to 10 in one before we change another species. Next plan. I know this is hard to read. It's easier to read in the plans that were submitted to you. Even that plan is difficult to read, but this is a photometrics plan that we provided for the project. And the next plan shows the lights that we're proposing. So the pole lights that are shown on the plan are shown on the right. There are 2 bollars that we're proposing to use in the courtyard area. And if you'd like me to, we could go back to the site plan. And you can see as you come in the driveway where the car is located, those dots are where the street lights are shown, or project lights are shown throughout the site. They give us adequate light. And then in the courtyard area, there's 2 bollards to give some light to the courtyard space. So with that, Dave Sullivan is here from traffic, and he'll be presenting next.
Good evening, thank you. David Sullivan, I am with SLR, formerly Mylona McBroom. I manage the Traffic and Transportation Planning Group. We started on this project a year ago, February, pre-pandemic. And from the very start, one of the key issues that we've been dealing with has been the driveway location vis-a-vis the sightline and visibility. So during the process, we've come up with a number of alternatives. We've met on site a couple of times with your staff, and have come to the best location we believe for and safest location for this driveway. Just to step back a second, the 3 critical things that we're looking at in terms of sight lines. One is called intersectional sight distance, and that's the visibility from somebody leaving a driveway, being able to see a vehicle approaching them, and that allows them to make an informed decision of that vehicle approaching, whether to leave or not. The second one we look at is called left turn entering visibility or sight distance, and that's for somebody in this particular case that would be on Bradley Road, taking a left turn into the driveway. Can they see the cars approaching them? The third, and really the most important of all the sight distance measurements that we take, is called the stopping sight distance. So that would be somebody on Bradley Road traveling eastbound. And if somebody was to take a left turn into the site, or if somebody was to exit the driveway, they would have plenty of reaction time and stopping time to slow down, allow that vehicle to enter the stream, or to stop if they needed to. So those are the 3 things we looked at. Our first evaluation was made where we found most importantly, the stopping sight distance is very good. The left turn sight distance is very good. But the intersectional sight distance is blocked by the hearth when you're looking left. So you can't quite see the full distance you would for what the posted speed limit is there. So as we're doing our evaluation, this was before the work was done out on Bradley Road, and we made the finding that once the stop signs go in at the intersection, those vehicles will be traveling significantly less than the posted or free flow travel speeds. And we think that in combination with the very good stopping sight distances would be adequate and safe. We met with your staff out there and explained to them what we're doing, and they had a couple of suggestions. One was that in front of the hearth, if we could secure what we call a view easement, and what that would do is the portion of the hearth that we're looking in front of, it would preclude them from, for instance, planting shrubs that would block our visibility. And the second thing they suggested was, well, the stop signs will be in soon, not knowing when soon was at that time. Why don't you wait till the stop signs are in and find out what the real speeds are? So we went back to our respective offices and took that into account. And several months later, the stop signs and crosswalks and the repainting was done. The easement was secured by Mr. Davis from the hearth. And as a bonus, a large tree that was in front of the hearth was removed, which had the ability to block sight lines. So we went back, reevaluated it, found out that the travel speeds, in fact, were less than 25 miles an hour coming out of the stop sign. The 85th percentile speed, which is the speed that 85% of the traffic is going at or below, was actually less than 22 miles an hour. It was 21.9, I believe. So we said, well, let's look at our statistics there. So what we found was that if you're taking a left turn, you should be able to see 178 feet. You can see well beyond that. If you're traveling on Bradley Road and you need to be able to stop if somebody comes out or somebody takes a left turn in, you need only 130 feet, and you can see well beyond that. For the intersectional sight distance, which is for the 21.9 miles an hour, we needed 242 feet. Well, we're about a car length short on that. But since we make the stopping sight distances and we make the turning sight distances, and we're only approximately a car length short on that particular factor, we met again with your staff, Rob Russo and John Inako, and met again, explained to them. We showed them the findings and the profiles, sent them a letter documenting everything. And then I think it was in March 20th of this year, John ultimately, finally, I'll say, because we were at this for over a year, said, I agree that as long as you have the easement and the site distances that you indicated, then I'm in concurrence with your findings. So that's kind of a long-winded version of what we typically do for stopping sight distance, but I thought it was important to give you the full story. So I'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to that or not. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Mike.
So just some minor housekeeping items so we make this a full, complete application. The signs for the public hearing, which we have tonight, were placed on both on 110 and 114 Bradley Road. Pictures were sent in to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the file. We did send out certified mailings to everybody within 150 feet of the project site. Again, those were also turned in and made as part of the file. As Dave was saying, the request to grant the sightline easement with the hearth, that stands where the language has been typed up and written up, has been agreed upon. The Schedule A's for the properties have been basically designed by the land surveyor. So the last thing would be the signing and the filing on the records. So we're about 90% there with that item. Just some minor things I want to add to the plan, that we're taking the roof leader runoff. It is a big building. It will have a lot of roof leaders, potential a lot of runoff coming off that roof. We're putting that into our storm drainage system. So that's not just spilling over onto the ground. It will be collected and go into our detention basin. It's important to note from a design criteria that we've taken the fire truck turning template and we've put it on the property. So we made sure that the fire trucks can get in and come around that backside. The fire trucks almost have 360-degree access on our site. Where it doesn't have it, it does have it from surrounding sites. So we did take a look at that. I just want to mention a couple additional amenities that we're proposing for the building. You did hear Dan talk about the fitness room. That's going to be a private fitness room. People won't be coming off the street to work out there or anything like that. It's just for the residents. The health department wanted to make that clear for the record that it's just private. Inside the building, one of the other amenities, we're going to have a bike storage area, trying to create healthier living, get people out riding bikes and things of that nature, and have a storage area for that. And I did touch upon the electrical vehicle charging stations. We have 2 of them in the rear. And then we do have full handicap accessibility. We have the handicap parking spaces in the rear that go directly into the main entry into the building. So With that being said, I know you've heard a lot of information. You've seen a lot. Us as a project team, both Jerry, Dan, Bill, Dave, and myself, we've worked a lot of hours on this. We've touched base. We tried to dot the I's and cross the T's before it came to you. I hope you've seen the building, you like our presentation, and now we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or the public may have at this juncture.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin, and to all of you who presented. Very well done. At this point, I would, this is a public hearing, and I will be giving the public first a chance to ask questions and later for support or opposition. Right now, I'd like to open it up to questions from the commission only. So anybody have any questions about what we've heard, please raise your hand. Peter Roos.
Yeah, just one quick question. Is there any plan to have any of these units qualify as affordable housing?
I'm going to kick that over to Jerry, who's the developer on that one.
Yeah, we've looked at that very carefully. We keep running up against the problem of infrastructure and septic and lack of density. When we started on this version of the building about a year ago, we were pretty worried about the cost of building it versus, revenue and whether it would pencil out. We're now in an even more, tenuous position on that level because the cost of construction materials have gone through the roof. So the simple answer is, affordable would be great where you have the infrastructure to support it, but without enough density, we don't see how we can, reduce revenue and be able to afford the construction.
Thank you.
Jerry, could I just add just one more piece of information as background information for the commission? So the town of Madison applied for a grant several years ago, and there was really two components to the grant. One was sidewalk infrastructure along Bradley Road. And as you can see, we were awarded that portion of the grant, and that project was recently completed. The other component was we actually did try to see if the state would give some assistance for infrastructure for septic system construction, basically in exchange for the developer potentially be willing to dedicate units towards affordable housing. So we did explore that possibility with the state. As Jerry said, the infrastructure costs are so high, it makes it financially difficult for a private developer to dedicate, a portion of units. But we did explore that in earnest, and unfortunately, we weren't awarded that portion of the grant. So I just think that's important for people to hear, because I know Jerry has made efforts to try to see if that would be a component of this project, and then the town and myself were trying to facilitate that. So it was unsuccessful this round, but Jerry, the other thing I think we should mention is, Clipper Ship Row, which is also owned by Davis Realty. Those units are not deed restricted, but if you do the calculations for those one-bedroom units, they definitely fall in line with the rental limits for affordable units of that size. And so it's not deed restricted at this point in time, but it does serve a need in the community. So I think we have to recognize that and balance, as we talk about this project as well. So.
Thank you, Dave. Dr. Hay.
Yeah, I have just two quick questions. I don't think I saw in any of the plans exactly where the wetlands are in relation to the building or the whole site. And then my second question is just about the placement of the driveway. It seems like the sight lines are sort of the trickiest problem it seems like you dealt with because of the hearth. I'm just curious why you didn't put the driveway on the other side of the building.
Yep. So I'll take the first question and then I'll turn the second question over to Dave, our traffic engineer. Dave Anderson, can you pop up our site plan? It should be sheet number 3. There you go. If you go into the lower right section where our detention basin is, and you go over to the right, there is a very small area. You can see the numbers in the wetlands flagging and a very small kind of brook area. And then we have the 100-foot upland review area. That's a dark line that's in the center of the parking lot. You can see there. And we purposely kept the building outside of that. And then I hope that answers your first question, Dr. Hay. Now I'll turn it back over to our traffic engineer to discuss the driveway location.
Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
Sure, thank you. It's interesting. That's a good point, because that was one of the first things we looked at. And if you look at Bradley Road in relation to this site, it's kind of a half moon or a frown shape. So when you move the driveway to the other side, you basically run into the exact same problem. The difference is that you're not only going over the property, but you're going through areas that may or may not have parked cars. It's a parking lot. So it already has a function. So looking to the left, we can get an easement because it's really unused land in front of the hearth. Looking to the right, they'd have to agree to give up part of their parking lot plus an easement. So we did look at that early on, as a matter of fact, and but it was not a feasible alternative.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add something to that, Dr. Hay, when we were out there with the town engineers, I did park my vehicle in that parking lot, and we tried to look out, and it was really very obstructive. You couldn't see more than 50 feet if a vehicle was parked there. So that's why we secured the easements from the hearth, so we had guaranteed sight distance.
I saw John Mathers with his hand up. John, you're on mute, just as a reminder.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, just a point of clarification. Has the view easement been granted?
I can turn that over to Jerry more specifically. I believe that everything is in place. The only thing that has to be done is final signatures and filing on the land records. We're pretty far along with that. Is that correct, Jerry?
Yeah, it's ready for signature. We hope to have it signed tomorrow. I was hoping for today, but the hearth is owned by a large corporation with a lot of people in different places that have to sign it.
Yeah, and it did take a long time to secure that and get everybody in agreement, but we did manage to get that.
Thank you. Ron Bodenson, I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, I had two questions. One on the lighting. It looked like the lights were made of glass. Is the light going to be going out to the side or is it going down? And then I had a second question while you think about that, is I was trying to count the parking places. Would I come up with 30? I don't know. It didn't seem like, I don't know what the parking requirements are, but if there's 30 units and 30 spaces, but you tell me, nobody addressed that.
This is Dan Chen. To answer your first question, the lights, I believe those pole lights are full cutoffs lights,
Okay.
so that they do not sort of shine or light pollution and shine lights up to the sky. The other, to answer your second question, there are a total of 48 surface parking spaces
Oh, okay. Wow.
on the site, with 2 accessible parking spaces in front of the main entry.
48, okay.
Mike, I do think it would be helpful to maybe just go into a little bit of discussion about the parking, because our regulations basically say that there's 2 parking spaces required per dwelling unit. But our regulations do not differentiate between a studio apartment and a 5-bedroom single-family home. In both those cases, we would say 2 parking spaces are required. And so I believe Dave maybe would be the one to chime in on this. There's Institute for Traffic Engineer documentation that you can look at to actually see, what types of units really generate certain parking requirements. So they've looked at that, and they've determined that the 48 parking spaces are enough to accommodate their need. And then Jerry also submitted a letter for the file in terms of how they manage the parking from Davis Realty standpoint. So if you guys could go into a little bit of detail on that, I think that might be helpful.
Sure, Dave, why don't you take that first part of that question?
Sure. Yes, we did look into it. Just to give you some perspective, it's not 2 spaces per unit, but it's 1.67 or 1 2/3 spaces per unit, which is in fact ample for a couple of reasons. One, it's only 1 and 2 bedrooms, so the units are relatively small. And secondly, it's right near the train station. So there will be a propensity for carless tenants. So we did look at the Institute of Transportation Engineers, who publishes statistics on all this type of stuff. And they have statistics, as a matter of fact, for suburban areas near train stations, suburban areas not near train stations, for multifamily dwelling units. And using those statistics, we would they would be estimating 38 spaces, or one per well, be more than one per unit, or 33 spaces considering the train station. Now, we also have information in our files that's Connecticut-based data for the most part. And we are able to stratify our data by the actual size of the units and how close it is to a train station. And we used our statistics, and we come up very similar to the ITE at about 1.4 units. So what that tells us is that somewhere, using all of the statistics we have local of ours and the national statistic, the actual parking requirement would be somewhere between 33 and 41 parking spaces, depending on which statistic you were going to use. And of course, as you know, there's 48 parking spaces. So there's ample parking, in our opinion, for what the anticipated demands would be here.
And Dave had submitted a report for the file, which basically outlines that, as well as all the traffic information that he put together for the project. And then Jerry, do you want to talk about how Davis Realty handles the the parking situation with regards to the letter you had submitted?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing to say is that we will be designated parking there for residents only, except for the spots that are specifically designated for visitors. We're not going to clog up the visual of the parking lot with a lot of signs. We'll try to do that with a very, very minimal amount of signage. But we find that unassigned spaces are definitely the most efficient for this sort of thing. We should note that the accessible spots are open as well. Based on what Dave said in terms of the expected, use of those spaces, 2 visitor spaces, we think we'll be able to increase that number based on the usage by the tenants with some experience. And then the last thing I would say is that the zoning regs do talk about adjacent parking areas. So we do have directly across the street is the train station, the old train station parking lot where workers or visitors could also park. So that's kind of part of our availability in the surrounding area.
And the last thing, Ron, regarding your lighting question is, lighting professional did put together a photometric plan with 0 spillover and made sure that all the lights meet the town of Madison regulations and requirements.
That answer your question, Ron? Your
Sure
questions?
does, thanks.
Anyone else with questions? Yes, Carol.
I have a couple questions that I hope are quick. I was wondering if it might be possible to put screening on the east side because it's 36 feet from the next building. And the second question is, there's a plan, the plan shows rooftop mechanical zone on the roof. Does that mean that there'll be structures up there, or I didn't understand what that meant.
These are a mechanical, sort of similar to a split unit system where you have those outdoor condenser units. There's likely going to be 30 of them, each one for the apartments, and they're about 3 feet since they're set back fairly low, and they're usually sit on curbs, and so but there are 30 of them. So we intentionally pull them away from all the edge and trying to make that as sort of low visibility as possible.
Yeah. And Carol, we had discussed that quite a bit, that we didn't want all those 30 units on the ground. So aesthetically, it wouldn't match with the building and the surrounding area. So that's why they were put up on top of the building.
Right,
And
and
then-
the north elevation doesn't show it, so it won't be visible really from the sidewalk or the street.
Yeah, so when this is Dan Chen, when you see from the perspective, that's why we intentionally picked the northwest and the northeast corner of the Bradley Avenue or Bradley Road, so that it's you can see that seeing 35 feet up and then further back by another 10, 15 feet, that it's really very not visible from that main street.
Yep. And then to answer your second question, Carol, before I turn it over to Bill, our landscape architect, is where we have 37 feet in between the two buildings, the issue is utilities. If you remember my site development plan, that going along that side, we're fitting two water service, a domestic water service, a sprinkler service, the gas main. So we can't plant all those trees with high root mass in there. That's the reason why you don't see a lot of plantings along that edge.
Thank you.
Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add.
I've got Jim Madison.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I noticed in the architect's rendering there on the street, there was a Tesla in that rendering, which led me to the question. I think Mr. Harkin, you mentioned charging stations on the property.
Yes, sir. We have two of them in the rear of the property.
You have two, okay. And they're part of the parking spaces then, right?
I believe so. That is correct. I can double check that. They're over in the right-hand area.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, I guess this would be for Jerry. Are those going to be free of charge to the residents?
Yeah.
Or will they have a meter on them?
I would expect they'll be free of charge. To be honest, I haven't looked into that yet. I know when we installed the one behind the movie theater years ago, with Charge Point, at that point they had a system for charging, and I haven't looked at these since then. But I prefer them to be an amenity, so I'll go with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Giselle, you're on mute.
Thanks. So I have a question. Actually, my first question was answered. That was all regarding the parking spaces. So thank you for that. But my second question that I do have is, so the driveway coming in, I'm certain that it's two-way because that's the only driveway to get into the parking lot. What is the width of the driveway, and then compared to what the actual width is supposed to be? To me, it just looks a little narrow. I'm just curious, what is the standard width of a two-way driveway as opposed to what we have there on your plan?
Yep. Good question, Giselle. Generally, when you do a driveway for a apartment building or commercial site, it's usually 20 feet wide, 10-foot lanes coming and going. In our case, we've made it 24-foot wide. We're even larger than we need to be. And the reason being is if you have delivery trucks coming in, UPS, Amazon, coming in there, we want a little extra room with these car spaces. So we actually made it 12-foot wide. And actually that's the requirement of a town road. Minimum lane has to be 12 feet wide. So we tried to make it substantial, because if you have a UPS truck and let's say the garbage man here to collect from the dumpster, you have two large vehicles. So we did make it as large as a town road.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did.
Any other questions? Let's see, John with your hand up again.
Yeah, Mike, you just mentioned the garbage truck, which reminded me of a question I had. When looking at the plans, it looked like the access to the dumpster area was pretty tight. Are you going to be able to get a garbage truck in there?
Yes, sir. David, you can put our site plan back up on there. Again, what I did is I put a turning radius in there, and you can see there's a little bump out that we actually put there specifically for the garbage truck, a fire truck, a large size vehicle. So where you have the receptacles, you can see where the doors open up. So what happens is they get out of the truck, they open the doors, they slide the recyclables or the dumpsters out. They pick them up or they do whatever they need to do to handle them. And then when they back up, the area that says no parking right behind it, as well as an indent of about 20 feet is paved. That is the area for the truck to back up and be able to drive out. So we did put those radiuses on there specifically to do that. And that's why the no parking sign is there and the extra asphalt. It's for so they can back up.
And is that dumpster area adequate for 30 units?
Yeah, it's actually fairly large. Again, it's to scale. That dumpster area is like, I believe it's 15 by 20. So you get 2 large size dumpsters in there, plus the recyclables. This isn't something that's going to be picked up just once a week with a building that size. They're going to have a garbage kind of maintenance plan that they're going to have to put in place once the units are filled up to find out how much they have to collect with those. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else with a question? Yes, Giselle. Giselle,
Sorry. Yep, just one more question. Just curious with the front courtyard and the aesthetics of the building, are you going to have any benches, picnic area, barbecue area? Are there any non-movable structures are going to be on the plan?
Dan, can you pull up the
Yep, I will.
site plan again?
Yep.
So in the courtyard area, in the paved area that's out by the U, there's 2 benches that are shown there that are permanent. And then as you come into the entranceway into the building on the back, there's a flowering tree to the left. There's a bench underneath there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dan, if you can leave that up real quick.
Yeah.
Up in the, I just want to draw the commission's attention that we do have a site sign for the project. It's located up over by the driveway where Dan just highlighted in red. So we do have a site sign that meets all the requirements. At the time of install or prior to install, we will submit a sign application and make sure that, again, that it meets all the requirements of the town of Madison regs.
Thank you. Any more questions from the commission? Not at this point. This is a public hearing, so I would ask if there are any members of the public who are viewing tonight. I'd like to ask a question about what we've seen so far. Please electronically raise your hand and ask it. Any hands, Dave?
Yeah, we do. I believe it's David Kadamus. David, if you could just unmute yourself and introduce yourself. David, you may need to unmute yourself. We'll come back to. Oh, we'll come back to David. So the next person with their hand raised is just EO. So if you could unmute yourself. Not having much luck. Oh, there you go. If you could please introduce yourself. They're unmuted. I can't hear them though. All right, we're going to give David another shot, and then David, are you there? If you are, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Not having any luck tonight, Ron.
Well, we continuing. Maybe we can give them a second chance in a bit.
Sure.
Or else I can answer both of the questions they asked myself. Definitely, maybe. Both. Okay, well, that isn't working for the moment.
I think it's working on our end. I'm sure of it. It's just for some reason they're having a difficult time unmuting.
You want to give EO one more time?
Sure.
One more shot, and then try Dave again.
Yep. So the individual logged in as EO, you could go ahead and.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, this is Eileen O'Neill, 49 Cottage Road. I have a question on the density of a project like this for zoning. What is the normal density since this is a special exception?
So
40.
In the downtown district for a project like this, there's not a particular density cap. So the density is really, I guess, driven in part by coverage, in part by septic and building height, but there's not a density cap that's outlined in the regulation.
Okay. And so this special exception, the exact special exception that is being asked for is just to put a project like this in an area that was zoned commercial. Is that correct? I'm reading the special exception permit application and I'm not clear what it is saying.
Yeah, it's for the use of the for a multifamily building. The use requires a special exception permit.
And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, it also does if any building over 10,000 square feet, I think triggers it, as well as any building's height that is over 30 feet. But with the special exception, you're allowed to go to 45. And I believe our building is at a little over
35 feet.
35 or something.
So you're just taking questions right now. There'll be comments later, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, yes, Ms. O'Neill, that's how we'll do it. Yep. So if you can hold on for a little while, we'll give you a chance to express your feelings about the project itself. Do you have any more questions?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's try Dave Kademis and see if we can get him back with his question.
All right, Dave, you there?
I think I figured it out.
All right.
So I'm not very good with Zoom, so I apologize. David Kademis, 7 Fence Creek Drive in Madison. My question is, how does this relate to the plan of conservation development and the long-term plan to create a walkway and develop Tux's Pond as a more of a centerpiece for the town? Because right now, the original plan that was developed over Bradley Road was to extend from the boardwalk from CVS to Bradley Road behind the Hearth, continue to Brookside Lane, and then continue around back to the post office parking lot area. So I'm just curious if how your site plan may accommodate support to that initiative.
I can answer that as far as a site plan perspective. We're providing the sidewalk in front of the building. We can't provide the entry onto the property because the whole rear of the property off of our property is inland wetlands. And due to the steep topography, you may remember during my presentation, there was like a 4-foot wall there. We have no way of getting anybody one over the wetlands, over the stream, and then up and over that wall. So access onto the property is basically prohibited by the existing grades and the existing topography of the site.
There is a pathway, though, currently that goes behind the Hearth all the way over to Brookside Lane.
There may be. Unfortunately, I'm just not aware of that, but I just know on our property, due to these existing grades, we can't get.
And that property is owned by the Hearth. David is correct. The Hearth owns that property and that path going to Brookside. They actually own Brookside too. So that property is not in control. So David, I'm going to speak just to generally about the plan of conservation and development. You're talking about a specific provision of the Bradley Road Vision Study, which was adopted kind of into the plan of conservation and development. More generally, the plan of conservation and development specifically recommends finding additional housing opportunities in Madison Center. So generally, this project does meet the goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development in that way. I think looking for ways to expand the sidewalk infrastructure and the pedestrian connectivity is a goal of that plan. Obviously, the sidewalk on site connects to that network, but the town is still looking for opportunities to continue to improve that. But this site doesn't have control specifically over the area you're talking about connecting over to Brookside.
So, but would the plan create views into Tuxas Pond and that area from the north south side of the building?
So this property behind this property, so south of this property, is the parking lot for the Hearth. And so what this property looks back onto is literally the Hearth parking lot and then the wetlands surrounding Tuxas Pond.
Okay.
There's not really an opportunity to create a view shed from this property without, I guess, really taking a lot of trees down from the wetlands surrounding the pond, which is owned by the Madison Land Conservation Trust. So there's not a view that I'm aware of that I can envision a view possibility from this property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other members of the public who wish to speak or ask questions? Excuse me.
Here's one more.
One more, okay.
Actually, two more, excuse me. Amila? Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
No, you're right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. I have my aunt actually at the house.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt? Could you identify yourself by name and address, please?
Sure. My name is Amila Solibasic, and I'm actually in Houston, but my aunt lives at the Hearth. And I do have a quick question. In terms of currently her room faces the proposed development, and I'm just curious what are the views actually from the Hearth? Like what is it they will be seeing? Is there like an elevation or any view studies, proximities? I just haven't been able to see anything.
Dan, are you able to pull that up on screen? Camila, give us a second. We'll get something up on screen and have someone.
No worries, thank you.
Did you, David, are you looking for elevation?
Yeah, I think if you could pull up the elevation of, I guess, the west side of the building,
Yep.
will be helpful.
That was it.
So this would be the elevation looking from the Hearth side on the west elevation. And the building is 75 feet away from the Hearth. Obviously, this is a straight on elevation. The perspective hopefully will also give a little sense of sort of the relationship between the building and the Hearth. This is standing on the northeast corner of Bradley Road, looking west, and what's beyond is the Hearth.
So they're
community.
they will be looking at the facade of the building.
That's correct. And if I may go to the site plan, this will show you that this is the Hearth on the right, and there's 75 feet between them. And if she's on this side, on the east side of the Hearth, she will be looking at the west side of the facade of the proposed building.
I see. That's troubling, but all right. Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And there was another one, Dave?
Yes. Joyce? Go ahead, Joyce. Joyce, you're able to, you've unmuted yourself. It looks like you're able to ask a question. Give her a second. She was toggling back and forth with the
Okay.
Joyce, are you able to hear us and ask your question? There's no other hands raised, Ron, so maybe we can come back to Joyce and she can ask her question if we're gonna go through comments.
Okay, Dave, thank you. With those questions being asked, let me ask if the commissioners have any questions as a result of what's been questioned by the public. John Mathers.
Yeah, Dave Kademis got me thinking, can we put up the site plan again and see how it's how the.
You know what would be good, John? The plan that I think would be helpful is the one Dave brought up earlier. It's an aerial image of where the site is. That might be.
Yeah, I'd love to see that because I just want to see that perspective. And does that path that goes behind the hearth and connects over to Brookside, is that path that's not affected by this project, right? That path will continue to exist?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you can.
Oh, yeah, now I get it. I see it.
Yeah.
This is Bradley Road. The
Yep.
hearth is right here to the west of the proposed, and
Hey,
that's the
Dan.
parking lot.
Yeah, Dan, do you see behind the parking lot? You see that little trail where your cursor is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right here.
that's the path you're talking about.
Yeah, and then it goes basically just, yeah, exactly the path a little bit and then almost due east from there. You can see Brookside.
Yeah.
So this is really, it has no impact on that path.
And I think from Dave Kademis's question, it's deceptive, at least to me. You would think that knowing where Tux's Pond is and where Bradley Road is and the hearth, that these buildings were much closer to the pond than they actually are. And wetlands and all those embankment issues aside, for eventual continuation of the walkway and hooking up to Brookside, there's plenty of elbow room to be able to do it, except you have those challenges of wetlands and steep inclines. But it's not hard up against the pond, is what you kind of think about when you don't see an aerial photograph, at least I don't.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
And Ron, we do have another person with their hand raised, Alex Province. Go ahead, Alex, just introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, good evening. I noticed affordable housing came up momentarily ago. David, is there another mechanism of which to make a few of these apartments affordable? And I understand the developer, making a project like this cost effective for their end. It doesn't make sense. But with all the support in town, is there another mechanism to make a few of these affordable if residents were willing to chip in or create some sort of fund or something like that?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll answer the question in two ways. The first is I would say that's not really for the Planning and Zoning Commission's discussion tonight because we don't have a zoning regulation requirement for affordable housing in this. So that's kind of a short answer. But in the longer term, Jerry Davis and I talk frequently, and I know Jerry and I have had several conversations about affordable housing in general and specifically about this project. So as we go forward and he tries to line up, financing for the project, I think we'll continue those conversations and, and Jerry, you should answer this as well, but, I know that I'm open to considering to explore creative opportunities to try to see if we can make something work. So I don't think an approval tonight would preclude any of those discussions from happening. I assume we'll continue to seek those opportunities out. So, but Jerry, maybe I'd like you to just chime in if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a thought that I don't know how to react to, but it's interesting to consider, and I would be definitely open to it. The realities of costs are just what they are, and it's a struggle for any project like this to make it pencil out. So like Dave said, I think it's worthy of a conversation. Sure.
And then I'll add something else just to the conversation for people that are on. So the town of Madison has put together an affordable housing plan advisory committee. And that committee is meeting now, working towards adopting a plan that will guide affordable housing development in Madison. And so that plan will be adopted by July 2022 in accordance with Connecticut general statutes. And it's going to be assisted with the South Central Regional Council of Governments. They're hiring a consultant to assist towns. Peter Roos, a member of this Planning and Zoning Commission, is on that committee, as well as several other representatives of other boards and commissions, including the Board of Selectmen. And so as a result of that document, there'll be recommendations for zoning regulation changes, ordinance changes, other creative ways to try to facilitate affordable housing. So I think as we go through that process, we're going to have a lot more tools in our toolbox to try to make sure that we do attract successful projects and incorporate this into, more developments going forward. And hopefully the state also comes with some creative ideas to incentivize people to do so. So certainly, I don't think we can hang the responsibility for affordable housing just on Jerry alone, because he happens to be proposing a project right now. But I think the town has to do some hard work to figure out how we can make it happen. So just for everybody's information, there is a real effort going on right now to try to facilitate this type of thing.
Does that help, Alex?
That's great. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. The building looks really cool, by the way. So thanks again.
Thanks for the question. Any other hands raised, Dave?
Yeah, we got Joyce again. Hopefully, let me see if we can unmute her. Go ahead, Joyce. Joyce, you just may need to unmute yourself. Yeah, I think Joyce might be having some problems on her end speaking into it. There's no other hands raised at the moment, Ron.
Okay. So going back to for this group of questions, prompt any other questions from the commission? Seeing none. I would at this stage, again, public hearing, ask, anything that at this point you wanted to say, Jerry or Mike or any of your experts.
I'd just like to say, one, thank you for the opportunity. As you can see, it's been a very long design process for us. We've, tried to dot the I's and cross the T's as much as we could, as well as touch base with all of town staff and commission members on wetlands, health department, things of that nature prior to coming here to make it a complete application. We've taken the feedback from town staff, from other commissions, and we've implemented it into the plan, trying to make the best plan possible for both Jerry and the town of Madison. With that being said, I mean, it's been a long haul for Jerry behind the scenes. He's been working on this for quite a few years, and it's almost coming to fruition what he had up in his mind. So from mind to paper is what you see. It's Jerry's baby. And, I think at that point, Jerry, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so, Mike. Thank you. And thanks, Ron.
No, I think we're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this stage, then, I will open it back up to the public. And first ask anybody who would like to speak in support of the application, please raise your hand and speak. Any hands, Dave?
Not yet, nope.
Okay. Then I will ask you, are there any members?
Ron, before you do that, let me just remind the commission, there was a letter of support in the file from the Economic Development Commission, and there was also a letter of support, I believe, from, I'm sorry, I forget, Jerry, you can remind me the woman's name, from the Friends of Scranton Library. So there was 2 letters of support in the file for the project.
Thank you, Dave.
And then we do have a hand raised now.
Okay.
It's Alex Province. Go ahead, Alex.
Hey, sorry to bug you guys again, but as a comment, I think the building looks really good and would be a great use for that location. I think it clearly put a lot of work in, and I think I would be proud to have it in town. So just my opinion.
Thanks for the comment. Now asking if there was anyone who wants to speak in opposition to the application, now would be the time to raise your hand.
Right, I believe we have Eileen O'Neill. All right, go ahead, Eileen.
Yes, hi. I think that this is a perfect location for a transit-oriented development, and having it including some workforce housing would make it perfect, with whatever that percentage number is, if it's 10%, which I think is what was used on the Gentile property for Hammonasset Apartments. But I did want to comment that the special exception of this is a use that's permitted for appropriate, harmonious, and desirable within a district. And so, is this appropriate? Is it desirable? Is it harmonious? So appropriate in the density with a 3-story building going in that location. I realize that the Hearth is a very tall building. However, that is serving the town of Madison for, with the elderly. It's a long-term care facility. So this is an apartment structure. So is that really an appropriate use? So, and the density of it is my concern. 3 stories. It is a beautiful building in design. However, it's a very typical building today of design, and I'm sure it's very energy efficient. However, is it harmonious with what Madison's architecture is at this current time, or with the neighborhood at this current time? And I would say that that maybe some of the features need to be softened or curved, because it does not look like a building that, especially at that size, that does belong in downtown or in the downtown area of Madison from my point of view. And as far as it being rental property, they're apartments. So what is the benefit to the town of Madison as far as building the tax base, which is, I know, of concern. So what exactly is that going to be? Because there are apartments, and apartment dwellers generally don't pay individual taxes. However, they could have children going into the school system. Certainly the roads and the infrastructure of the town are going to bear this. So those are some of my comments as to why I am not in favor of it, primarily because I think it is too dense for that area, and that you don't have the parking, because you cannot necessarily say that people are going to use the transit. I like the direction that it's going as far as transit-oriented developing, but I think it's something that's similar to just coming out of the Boston area, where they're building these types of buildings like crazy in a major city. I just don't see it as appropriate for the town of Madison and the adjacent towns in the shoreline area, where currently Hallmark is, filming a movie. I just don't see it as fitting in. So maybe there could be something done with the design of it, and also the density. I know you can say 3 stories because there's 3 stories next door. So you can get away with that. Also, that this is a commercial area. so that you don't have a lot of residents and you don't have a lot of people that are on this call saying that they're opposed of it. Many may not even realize that this is going on. Certainly it's an improvement to what was in that space previously, but I do think that it needs some fine tuning. And I'm wondering if Chairman Clark, if there has been an impact study done for this special exception.
I'm not the applicant, Ms. O'Neill. So your questions or your position should be directed to the applicant.
Okay. Has there been an impact
An
study?
impact study, I would just say as a commissioner that there's been a collection of studies that total impacts from a variety of areas, you know, from septic to ACA, who extensively reviewed it on its appearance and it's fitting in with the streetscape and those types of things. And they've had their bite of the apple and approved it. And the only comment I would make is that we're Planning and Zoning Commission. We have no control over whether Mr. Davis is building 30 condominiums or 30 apartments. It's the structure. We have nothing to say as to how it's owned or leased. That's the property owner's right and decision, or the developers in the case of a condominium. Anything you wish to add to that on the applicant side?
Well,
On the impact statement, I guess would be my.
I would just add, you know, and look, I appreciate that, you know, comments on the architecture are certainly fair and subjective. But I would, on the taxes side, I just want to point out that, you know, this building will generate a lot of property taxes to the town that will be paid by us. In addition to which, residents pay taxes for, you know, cars that we all have to pay for. So, you know, I'm not sure I agree with your what I thought I understood to be, you know, you're feeling that a rental building generates less taxes for the town. I think it'll generate quite a lot.
And I just have one more comment regarding that is, you know, as far as an impact study, we've looked into the impact of septic, stormwater, lighting, landscaping, traffic. You know, ACA has looked at the impact of the building on the neighborhood, the design of the building. So I think we've gone through 6 or 7, you know, studies on impact. I don't know what other further areas we can look into regarding that. So that's just my comment for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Any others in the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application? Please raise your hand. Anyone, Dave?
No.
I will, however, think maybe we should try Joyce just one last time to see if she has a question or maybe wishes to take a position.
All right, so Joyce, if you want to give it another try, just raise your hand. I think she's feels the same about Zoom that I do. She's given up on it. Ready?
Well, that's too bad. And I'm sorry, Joyce, we didn't get to hear your question or possibly your thoughts. Anything else that the applicant wishes to say before we discuss closing the public hearing?
The only real thing is I know that Joyce has tried. If she wanted to submit a question to Dave after this meeting, you know, and if, you know, Dave, you think it's of substance, you know, I'd be happy to answer that question. If she wants to call my office or, you know, meet in person, I'd be happy to do that.
It's a kind offer. Thank you, Mr. Harkin. And that's it? Does the commission have any last questions to ask of the applicant? Seeing none, I would ask then if anyone would be willing to make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Elliot, second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, the public hearing is closed. So what do we think? And I won't pick on anybody. Would anybody care to volunteer and start the discussion? Any hands?
Start.
Jim Madison, please.
Okay, well, first of all, this has been a long time in coming, I know. And I'm really pleased to see what has been brought before us. One, I think the design of the building for a large structure is really good. I congratulate Jerry and his architect team in the design. The other thing I would say, one of the things that had concerned me kind of all along was just the traffic that would ensue there. And I believe that the addition of those stop signs right there made a huge difference. And that came out obviously with the discussion of the traffic study. I think the density is, I think that's the perfect location for it. It's in the downtown village district. I think it's great. You have the transit closeness with the train station. I think it's been really well put together, and I personally am in favor. And I hope that if this does pass by the commission, that Jerry and the team are able to move forward and make it happen.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else wish to volunteer before I start? Joe Banofsky. Hello, Joe.
Hi. I remember back when this was being proposed as, I think, a 13-story building or something like that. So, and that was a long time ago. I think this was an incredibly well thought out, executed, and easy to understand presentation, leaving almost no need for most questions. Without drawing this on or saying anything that Jim already said, I'm in favor for this, and I wish Jerry and the team good luck.
Thanks, Joe.
You're
Okay, next volunteer. Giselle.
Not much to say here. Simply, I think this is a very handsome structure that was presented tonight. Very pleased with everything presented. I agree. Doesn't leave much question. Very thorough. Well presented. I'm in favor as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before I make Ron, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, again, I had very positive reaction, also very impressive, though I can't help but thinking there's sort of a built-in contradiction to at least the parking aspect of it. I think the barest minimum parking is based upon the idea that we're close to the train station and people may not have cars and may be part of the workforce. On the other hand, this is not a workforce. There's no affordable housing. My guess, the rents, because of the cost of the project, are going to be high. And I assume someone who's going to pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month, if that's what it is likely going to have a car, maybe even a Tesla. So in a sense, it's so close to the train station, it's a disappointment that it's not going to serve probably the people who are going to be taking a train to work in New Haven. But what a great project, very impressive. I'll be for it.
Are you suggesting by your comment they need 46 more electric charging stations?
That could be the major profit center once Mr. Davis decides to charge for them.
Understood. Anybody else wish to volunteer? Otherwise, I will call. Let me ask Carol Snow. Carol, what are your thoughts?
You know, at first I was having trouble with the flat roof and some of the design issues, but I appreciate that ACA approved it. I looked around the neighborhood and I saw the only other flat roof is a gymnasium on Academy School. And I didn't want it to look like that. But I think that, what the architects have done is really a nice job. I did go to the architect's website and saw that there are a couple other buildings in the Boston area that look very similar. And I think also they're, I think they're well done and I think they look great. I also was going to ask about aging of these buildings since it's a concrete fiber composite material. Do we know long-term?
Carol.
We
just stop
have
you for a second.
closed the public.
Oh,
we've
sorry,
closed
I shouldn't be
hearing.
asking that now. Never
We
mind.
cannot- You can ask Dave Anderson possibly.
Yeah,
but
well, Carol, we can follow up though to get answers to that question after we close tonight.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
No, that's a good question. It's just that when the public hearing is closed, we're not allowed to get any more input from the applicant
Thank you.
or from the public. But it's a good one. Thank you, Carol. Elliot, you look like you thought.
Yep. I thought it was an excellent presentation. The plan is definitely well thought out. And I think it'll be a great addition to the area and the town, and I would be totally in favor of approving.
Okay. I think we've covered everybody. I see Tom Berland's on the call, but he didn't get seated. He was late. Welcome, Tom.
Howdy.
I didn't notice till recently that you had joined. I concur with everything that the other commissioners have said. And in addition, say how neatly it fits into, I think as Dave alluded to, into the town's plan of conservation and development. I think in my own mind, the only hanging chad, so to speak, is the execution of that easement to make sure that happens for safety purposes. And it seems like it's a done deal, but since it hasn't been signed, maybe we could make that a condition if necessary. But other than that, I agree with what all you've said earlier. Any other thoughts or comments? John?
Yeah, Ron, you skipped right
I
over
missed
me.
you. I'm sorry, John.
That's okay anyway. No, I think I echo everybody else's sentiments. I think it's a really good looking building. I think it's going to be a great addition to Bradley Road, a great improvement. And I hope all these residents walk into town and dine in the restaurants and shop in the shops. And Ron Bodenson, I hope some of them take the train to their high paying jobs in Yale and New Haven and so forth. But I think it's a great project, and I know that concrete composite hardy board lasts a lot longer than wood.
Thank you, Carol. Or Doctor, gee, I'm sorry, Doctor, my fault there too. Go ahead.
Dr. Hay, we can't hear you for some reason. It looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
I think it's my headphones. Can you hear me
There
now?
you Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't have much to add. I'm also in favor of it and I agree with all the comments. I think it's a really good looking building and such a vast improvement over what's there right now. And I agree. I think it'll be really wonderful to have a little more density in that area and bring people into town. And I am also optimistic that people will actually live there and take the train to go various places. So yeah, very, very much in favor.
And take the train to come visit. And as John Mather said, take their friends out and support the shops and businesses in the center of town that work both ways in the train transport. So with that, I would then ask someone if they cared to make a motion. Anybody wishing to do so? I see Joe Banoff go.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Ron.
Wouldn't we need a condition for both the easement and isn't the state still need to approve the septic? So I think it needs to be conditioned perhaps on both of those, but Dave could tell us.
Well,
yeah, no, I think the safe thing to do would be to condition on approval. I was kind of being quiet because, Jerry already attested that they're going to have it signed. So that's part of the record. And then, obviously the project can't move forward until they have state septic approval. But I think as a matter of course, it is a good idea to include the conditions. And I shared those with the applicant team before and talked to Jerry directly about it. They have no problem with those conditions.
Okay. Joe, would you be able to amend your motion with the added?
Sure. I motion to conditionally approve as presented with the conditions being that the septic is approved by the state And the easement is granted by the Hearth.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A second?
I think
From anyone?
Giselle seconded.
Giselle seconding. Any further discussion? Call the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Unanimous approval. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Jerry, Dave. Excellent presentation, and look forward to seeing the project develop.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we've gotten to almost 9 o'clock. Gee whiz, we were fortunate that those other two avoided the agenda tonight. Otherwise, we would have had Uber out delivering breakfasts and coffee, I think.
We'd be just starting.
So thank you, everybody. We do have 2 sets of minutes to go over. Elliot, are you prepared for that?
Yes, Ron. We have the, let's see here, regular meeting minutes from March 18th. Members present, Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Mathers, Panofsky, McDowell, Hay, Miller. Alternate present were Ruse, Bodenson, and Snow. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion, Elliot.
Jim made the motion. Looks like Joe seconded. Any discussions or changes?
I have
Seeing
one,
none.
I do have one little comment. We're doing the March ones, right? The March minutes.
This is March 18th.
Right, okay, so after we heard from Mr. Plunkett, the motion was to, let's see, I think, we said that we would have a site walk, we would schedule a site walk, and then in the end, I think we all just went and looked ourselves. I don't know how important that is, but.
It isn't germane. That was what was discussed at the meeting. Am I correct?
Yeah, so Carol, I think what Carol's suggesting is that rather than just state that we were going to do a site walk, just include some language suggesting that we just decided to do it as individuals, right, Carol? That's what.
Yes, and that I think the motion says that we were planning a site walk, and I think we did discuss it and decided not to do the site walk as a formal site walk.
As a note of the site walk. Okay, that's a good point.
Marlene, did you catch that?
Yeah, I understand that. The way I wrote it is planning. I thought planning a site walk. I knew also that that it was could be individual. That's why I wrote it that way, because at the time of the motion, it was like all the talk was at the same time. And I knew it could also be individual or it could be all together. So that's why I said planning a site walk rather than that the commission was going to go on a site walk. So I don't know if you want me to change the wording. I just need to know specifically how to change it.
All right, Carol, you're up. Give a suggestion for some language.
But I'm the new kid.
You stirred the pot, so I'm just kidding. Yeah, if you have any suggestion, though, I don't have it right in front of me. I'll pull it up.
I mean, again, I don't know how important it is, but if we maybe made it plural so that we could, or just say that, it was to be done at the discretion of the commission members.
Why don't we say
planning a site walk that would be done at the discretion of the commission members or the commissioners?
Commissioners.
Yeah. We could say
planning a site walk at the discretion of the commissioners.
Site visits.
Yeah, say that's a good idea. Say site visits. Individual site visits at the discretion of the commissioners, I think would be a good way to say it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Good point. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
Any other discussions or changes? So then we have to make a motion to approve as amended then, correct?
Correct.
So then I need a motion.
I'll re-motion to approve as amended.
That's Joe. Seconded by
Carol.
Dr. Hay.
Oh, it's Dr. Hay, excuse me.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Our second one is our meeting from April 1st. Members present: Clark, Hitchcock, Berlin, Mathers, Panofsky, McDowell, Hay, and Miller. Alternate present: Ruse, Bodison, and Snow. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll
I'll
motion
make
to
a motion.
approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Joe, seconded by Ron. Any discussions or changes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Elliot. Appreciate it. Commissioners' comments. I don't have too much to say. I will point out that I happened to read the source this afternoon, and there was a letter to the editor from, since we're on tape, I won't mention the name, but it was an individual who owns 7 acres of land very close to town, and I was alluding to the fact he's already getting calls from developers, and and he could put up to 26 units on his property. And we may be asked about this, not that we should be talking about it, but if anybody's talking about that letter, that property does not qualify and cannot be used for that purpose. It's lacking the street frontage, so that there's enough disinformation, misinformation, all kinds of information, because there's so much interest in the application. But that is not true, and I just thought I'd make you aware of that that could not be done under the zoning regulations that exist. There was mention a little bit earlier tonight of affordable housing during the application, and I just thought I'd check with Peter Roos to see if there have been any meetings, or just generally how are things moving along with the Affordable Housing Committee.
You're muted, Peter. There you go.
Yeah, Peter's muted.
Yeah, I got it. That's good. So if you have 5 minutes, I'll kind of give you just a quick thumbnail of what we've done in the last month. So, the committee started actually, I think, in early February, but it was mostly people like myself who came from town committees, Aaron Duquesne, who came from the Board of Selectmen, and some other folks from Madison Youth and Family Services and a couple of other groups. And it wasn't until the Board of Selectmen actually picked up 3 additional members for the committee that were kind of not part of the town that were selected, that we actually formed it, as a full 7-person group. And now we have a chairman. So we've met now on March 5th and the 12th, the 26th, and then the April 8th. And just a few comments that have come out of it. Dave mentioned earlier tonight that the South Central Regional Council of Governments is going to help us out with putting together our plan. They'll help us and other towns together. We haven't quite figured out how we'll avail ourselves of that, but that'll certainly help with the cost and a lot of the research, and so that'll be good. We've had a chance, and really what we've been doing so far is educating ourselves and just doing fact finding as much as anything, I would say. We also have been working on an outreach list, and that list would be something that people we want to talk to about affordable housing in the area. So you can almost imagine who that would be: the Board of Education, police, town employees, the Hope Partnership, realtors, Neighbor to Neighbor, Connecticut Food Bank, etc. And ask the questions. Do you live in Madison? Why or why not? Do you want to live in Madison? What are the barriers that prevent you from moving to Madison? And so, we just have to build this base level of information. We've also been looking to other towns that have already put together programs. The town of Salisbury in I guess it's the northwest corner of the state, put together a very provocative plan, as has Essex. And that's a good guide for us to move forward. On the 26th, David Fink came and spoke to us. And David I think many of you know is with the Partnership for Strong Communities. He's the one who introduced the concept of ALICE that I talked about a couple weeks ago. It was pretty compelling that 23% of the households in Madison are ALICE households, and 30% of the households are actually burdened by either their rent or their mortgage payment, and that includes broadly property taxes, utilities, et cetera. He also talked about 3 of the myths that you see out there with affordable housing that he has attempted to debunk, and I think to a certain extent, he's got lots of information that will do that. And those big 3 are that it creates overcrowding in the schools, that it leads to more crime, and it reduces property values. And there's no real empirical evidence for any of those to be true. And we've gotten some information on that. And then last week, we heard from Liza Petra and Mary Jo Kestner. Liza is the executive director of the Guilford Foundation. So it's a similar foundation like we have here in Madison. And Mary Jo Kestner was on that foundation. She's also an architect. And they discussed how Guilford is just going about raising awareness about affordable housing. They originally started with a town survey, and I'm guessing we will do something like that as well. They really discussed how you educate the public, because you need to bring the public along in this discussion. And they brought together town leaders and prominent citizens, and they created a video that just talks about why people think affordable housing is necessary for a town like Guilford, or in our case, a town like Madison. They also did a parcel study to look at various areas that might be potentially used for affordable housing. And I note that it's taken about 10 or 11 years, but there is a new affordable housing development going up in Guilford near the train station. It's the old Woodruff property at, I think it's the intersection of Old Stonehouse Road and Old Whitfield. That will be 16 units. It's subject to still some state funding, but the town owned that property, and by a vote of 202 to 39, the citizens agreed to deed it to the owners of the affordable housing development. So that's pretty positive. It's taken 10 years to get that far. So it's going to, this is obviously not something that's done overnight. There's a lot of educating to go on, and a lot of politics and just legal entrapments, et cetera. But it can be done, and they've not put a spade in the ground yet. But that will come once they get state funding. I'm guessing that will actually occur. So that's kind of where we are. There's a lot to do still, and there's a lot of educating to do. And so I'm sure we'll be coming back with more information. But I thought it might be helpful just to summarize kind of our first months and activities.
And it's been active. It's nice to see them, you folks hard at work, and hopefully some good things will come out the other end. And it's like you say, it's very complicated and not an easy problem to address, but address it we will somehow.
You bet. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate the overview. I don't have anything else to add at this point. Dave, what do you have?
Yeah, I'll just take 1 minute and just bring the commission up to speed. The Coastal Resiliency Commission has been meeting, and they've made what has become, I guess, a controversial recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, suggesting that they amend the floodplain ordinance to require buildings to be elevated an additional foot above the FEMA requirement. So the area that would apply to would be in the velocity zones, which is right on the coastline, and in coastal AE zones, which are zones that experience wave action. And then the other component of their recommendation was that right now we have what's termed a 1-year look back period. So you can invest in your property up to 50% of the value of the structure, and you don't need to come into compliance with the required FEMA elevation. And you can do that in a 1-year period. So it's called a 1-year look back. The suggestion from the Coastal Resiliency Commission was to go to a 5-year look back, which means you'd be restricted to investing 50% of the value over a 5-year period rather than just a 1-year period. And so it would effectively may encourage or require homeowners to elevate their buildings sooner than they had planned. So the Coastal Resiliency Commission kind of modified the proposal to phase in this look back period a little differently. So basically give almost nearly a 3-year kind of heads up on it. And so they voted last night to just confirm that recommendation and sent it back on to the Board of Selectmen. What I mentioned at the meeting last night, what I wanted to mention to this group, because I think it's good information, is this recommendation that the Coastal Resiliency Commission came up with is actually not a new recommendation. It is a recommendation that's contained within the 2016 Coastal Resiliency Plan that the Board of Selectmen actually endorsed. So that plan was created through a grant opportunity with the COG. So the towns of Madison, Branford, and Milford shared a consultant, and we arrived at this plan. And if some folks may remember on the Planning and Zoning Commission, so that plan was adopted in June of 2016. In December of 2018, our commission actually discussed that recommendation, and we forwarded that recommendation back to the Board of Selectmen again and said, you know, we encourage you to do this. We made our own regulation change, which was eliminate the requirement for people elevating their homes up and above the FEMA elevation from having to go get variances to do so. So if you elevate your home, you don't have to go and get a variance if you, this is for existing structures, if you violate the building height or if you need to put a staircase in the setback. So we made it a little bit easier for people to come into FEMA compliance. So then we made that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, which actually resulted then in CERCA, who Joe McDougall's involved with, Yukon CERCA, the Center for, I'm blanking on the name right now. But they came and gave a presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning and Zoning Commission, a joint presentation on, anticipated impacts of sea level rise and climate change on the town of Madison. And CERCA kind of, among other recommendations, reiterated that recommendation. So I'm counting on my fingers, that's 3 times that the recommendation was forwarded. As a result of that joint meeting, the suggestion arose to create the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And so that commission then became formed and started meeting. And so they're getting a lot of heat for this recommendation, but I want to make sure everybody understands that this is a 5-year-old recommendation that's been, floating around for some time and has been forwarded 4 times now to the Board of Selectmen. And, I think there's definitely some dialogue around the policy, and I think that's a healthy debate and it's a good debate to have. I think I just want to make sure it's clear to people that the Coastal Resiliency Commission isn't acting in some rogue fashion on their own, that their recommendations have been informed by town approved plans, and that they're acting in a capacity to try to increase the resilience of the town. And the Board of Selectmen have some hard work to do to see if that resiliency component is overrides what others have been concerned about, aesthetics along the shoreline and impact to homeowners. And that's a healthy dialogue to have. And I'm not sure where it's going to fall, but I think it's it was a little bit of a misperception that this group kind of came out of left field with this information. So
I just might add, Dave, that I've learned that this is something that is not come out of the blue either, just for Madison. Many towns have already utilized the 5-year look back. In fact, some use 10. We just happen to be at 1. So we're not a town out, blazing new heights, not a Freudian slip, but taking this to an additional level. This is commonly done. I think Branford is one of them. And I'm not sure whether I heard Old Saybrook was a 10-year look back, but it's rather common. And some homeowners have used the 1-year look back to just gradually, build a new house year by year without having to elevate it and protect it from the elements. Not that correct, Dave?
Yeah, no, I think that's generally correct. And I said, I don't think it's necessary for us to get in a debate about it. I mean, if people have opinions, they can certainly share them, but I just wanted to, share that information. I shared it last night at the Coastal Resiliency Commission meeting, and I just wanted to share with you guys. And if anybody has any questions or thoughts about it, you can connect with me directly, and I can connect you with the Coastal Resiliency Commission if you'd like.
Okay, thank you for that. Excuse me 1 second. So, well, I don't have anything else. And with that, I guess, unless anybody else has anything you want to add, any commissioners? Okay, well, with that, I will accept or entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
Moved.
Joe, thank you. Peter, second. All in favor? Aye. We will see you in early May. I'm not sure of the date. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.